Just a quick warning, this podcast series contains discussions about crime, trauma, sexual abuse, drug use and suicide. Listener discretion is advised. From drug dealer to comedian, his journey is a testament to resilience. Formerly incarcerated for selling drugs, Andrew now takes comedy stages with his show, Jokes About Time I Went to Prison. Andrew, welcome to the Stick Up.
Russell, hello. Thanks for having me.
It's been a long time coming. I'm really loving what you're doing, and I just love how you can. Comedians just have this thing, the most mundane things that happen. You can make light of it and make a laugh of it. Tell me, where did it all start from you? Just we'll have a brief view of where you grew up and what your family like.
I grew up in the North Shore of Sydney, in Hornsby, up until about the age of 18. I went to a private school in Sydney, in Lane Cove, and then I
robbed the bank there. It was the best I've ever earned.
Was it a Combank? I think you told me before.
Yeah, I've got it. Yeah, it was great. Fond memories of Lane Cove.
Lovely space, yeah, to grow up as well. I had a good time there, and then I went to university in Bathurst, which is kind of like
Charles Sturt?
3 hours west. Yet CSU, Charles Sturt. I studied communications there, and then I got into public relations. And so for anyone who doesn't know that, a job is basically I was just helping companies to promote themselves, mainly in traditional media, the newspaper, stuff like that, and also help them when they got into strife. I'd help them to kind of manage their reputation when they got in trouble for various things. So I think that was certainly a skill that I've used my whole life, is helping to spin things when I get myself in trouble.
How good.
So, yeah, and the whole time I was doing that job, I was kind of moonlighting as a drug dealer.
Yeah. What were you doing? Was it the party scene? Were you in the party scene?
Well, I mean, I just started taking ecstasy basically as soon as I finished high school, around 18 or 19, and then I was at uni, and there's a lot of party drugs going on at university, and I went to Thailand and I had magic mushrooms for the first time, and I had such an amazing time on mushrooms that I came back to Sydney and told my mate how good they were, and he started researching how to grow them. And then next thing you know, we were growing them just for friends, and we were taking them to parties, and we were sitting there at parties with like a handful of fat, wet mushrooms, trying to figure out how the fuck to eat these things because they tasted foul and they smelt bad. And so we were just sitting there with like a handful of fat, wet mushrooms and peanut butter and just trying to shove it all in our mouth. Because once it got down, it was great. You'd have a good time. And so I was like, there's got to be a better way to get these fucking things down. Yeah. So I was like, what if we dehydrate the mushrooms, get all the moisture out of it, and then blend it up into a powder and cap them? And so then we started growing and selling magic mushroom capsules, mainly just to friends and friends of friends. But then over the years, that kind of blew up because people, whenever they had mushrooms, they would have such a good time that they'd become advocates for it. They'd be like, oh man, have you never tried mushrooms? You should try them. And so gradually, this thing just blew up.
They're starting to be used a lot in the healing space, aren't they?
Yeah. And I had a lot of people that would use it for that. It wasn't just for parties. People would buy mushrooms off me because they like to microdose. They found that it helped them with their work or with meditation or all kinds of stuff. There was a lot of people that would come to get mushrooms off me for various things. Like one guy bought mushrooms off me because his grandmother liked to have a quarter of a mushroom cap when she did lawn bowls.
Okay. Oh, man.
One guy bought mushrooms off me because his mother was passing away and the whole family wanted to have a collective drug trip before she passed. So they thought that was going to be quite special. So all these kind of things helped me in my head to be like, this is not a bad drug. So
you're basically just justifying it. But I just done something yesterday about alcohol, and I think alcohol from a standpoint does more damage than mushrooms ever would.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The domestic violence and the legalities. It's just the fact that it's legal is that terminology which I'm not a great fan of.
Yep. They've got all those studies about which drugs create the most harm to self and to others, and alcohol's the number one by a million miles, and mushrooms is like down the other end.
Tell me what your daily routine was when you were in full swing.
Oh, I mean, there were many years where it was more of a side hustle. I wasn't making that big of money out of it. It just helped me to pay rent and go out to dinner and that kind of stuff. So I'd be working during the day, a day job, working in public relations, and then in the evening, I just have a couple of people come over to buy mushrooms.
Mm.
And even then, for many years, there would be a quiet period around winter. So it was people only really wanted to do them in summer when they go out to camping and music festivals and that kind of stuff. And then I saw that there was a huge spike during Vivid at the Vivid Light Festival in winter. People
I get it.
so it'd be quiet around kind of May and June. Then once it got to June, there'd this spike for winter for the Vivid Festival, and then it would go back to being quiet again. And then by about October, as things started to warm up, then it would ramp up again. But then over the years, that kind of slowly expanded to me selling other drugs. So for many years, it was just mushrooms. Then I expanded into MDMA and ketamine, LSD, and cocaine. And the cocaine was probably the one that fucked me the most because I could have mushrooms at my house and I didn't need to have them every day. But when I had coke just sitting around, I found that I was a user dealer. I was selling it and I was using it by the mountain. So the last few years became a mess. I ended up leaving my job in public relations and just going to full-time drug dealer. And there were many weeks where I would just go 5 days straight, just selling, sitting up, just snorting coke, no sleep, 5 days, and I'd sleep for 48 hours and then get back to work.
Yeah, it's not a good feeling waking up after a bender.
No, and it wasn't a good feeling when you're on day 5, no sleep. There's the paranoia starts to kick in, and you're not in a good place mentally.
Yeah, I've been there, man.
Yeah.
It's not a good feeling, and it's overrated. So let's talk about, did you feel like you were being coming to the attention of the police? Did you?
No. I thought I was absolutely not on their radar. I thought they were idiots. They're just standing around fucking Redfern train station or Central with a couple of sniffer dogs, and they got no clue. They're just trying to chase around any guys that look young and Middle Eastern in a Mercedes, and I'm driving around in a go-get car share as a white dude doing drug deals in Surrey Hills, and they've got no fucking idea. And they didn't. Reality is my fiance had a mental breakdown on cocaine and ran off with a bunch of my cash and got picked up by the police and told them that I was a drug dealer, and that's how I got on their radar. But before that, I was totally invisible, and I was doing it for 15 years. So I think if it wasn't for that, I would have kept going. And the only thing that would have stopped me is probably a heart attack from too much coke, not the cops.
The old coke, isn't it? It's just that was one drug that just doesn't. That wears me out quicker than anything. Heroin, I'd go for years.
Yeah,
I'd most probably wash your car and mow your lawn and fucking.
Yes, luckily there was certain drugs like heroin and ice that I stayed away from because I was like, I've got enough problems with the drugs I'm already doing. I don't want to make it worse.
Don't want to add to that.
Yeah.
So just tell me, did they have a task force on you or something like that? They put a task force on you?
No, I don't think so. It was just my house got raided by the Raptor Squad.
Raptor?
Yeah.
This is what amuses me. Raptor was a squad that got brought in. Their aim was to target bikies.
Yeah.
It's no fun when they start targeting fucking everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just a fat mushroom dealer, no weapons in their house.
Yeah.
It felt like overkill, probably.
Yeah, it would have felt like overkill.
And now that mushrooms and MDMA have been legalized in Australia for medicinal use, it's even it makes the fact that they rated me even more silly.
Yeah. And what happened from there? So did they find any product?
Yeah. So I had a second house where I would keep stuff, but I was so fucked up on drugs sometimes that I just got lazy. And so I would have too much at my own house because I couldn't be bothered going back and forth. And so it was just one of those days where I had a bit too much on me. And so they raided and I had about half a kilo of mushrooms on me. I had about 300, 400 acid tabs. I think it was about half an ocker of ket and coke. And about an ounce and a half of MD and then about 15 grand in cash. But the thing that fucked me the most was the mushrooms. That was large commercial.
Yeah.
That was easily over large commercial thresholds is much less than than half a keg.
And then what are the penalties for that, like in time wise?
Well, the maximum penalty is life in prison.
Yeah.
Right. But luckily, I was in remand for 4 months in Parklea and Long Bay, and then I got bail. And when I got sentenced, there had been recently some cases. I think there'd been like 80% of cases on large commercials for mushrooms or acid had been given an ICO, an intensive corrections order, instead of
So the
prison
precedent
time.
was set, yeah.
But no one had been given an ICO for having large commercials of both.
Yeah.
And I had both. So it was like, this is a fucking long shot, but we got it. So the reason why I got an ICO.
An ICO is an abbreviated intensive correctional order, which can you explain what happens when you're on an ICO?
So I'm essentially doing a prison sentence in the community. So I have to stick to the rules that they set for me, the Department of Community Corrections. Luckily, they considered me to be very low risk. So you might have to report in regularly or do drug testing, all this kind of stuff. I don't have to do any of that. I just have to get permission to leave New South Wales. So luckily they support the work I'm doing, so they always approve that. I have to go to the State Parole Board if I want to leave Australia. And then I was ordered to do 200 hours community service, which I completed pretty quickly. But yeah, they can kind of set the rules based on what your risk profile.
So tell me the process. You get arrested. What happens from there?
So they raided my house. I got taken to Surrey Hills Police Station.
Also known as Surrey Hills.
Yeah, it's a grim place. Down in the dungeons there with no natural light, no pillows. It was actually funny when I got arrested. I was like groaning to one of the cops. I'm like, "Fuck, you guys have got no pillows, no cells." And the guy obviously had never been down there. He's like, "What are you talking about? There's pillows." And I'm like, "No, there's not." So I just had to like roll up my jumper and make a makeshift pillow on those like shitty mattresses when you're sharing one of those cells.
People come over to my house and wonder why I've got pillows in every cupboard. I'll never go without a pillow again. I've got like
you need it, right?
10 pillows in every cupboard. I go, what's with the fucking pillows?
I get it, Russ. You've had some rough sleeps.
Yeah. So you go to, but tell me this, did you have a criminal history before that?
Yeah, I'd gotten into a fight when I was like 20, so like was that like 16 years ago, but nothing drug related.
All right. So what was the reason? So you went to court and your bail refused, yeah?
Your bail refused because I was on two indictables, two large commercial drug supply charges, and so I got refused bail. And that was a shock because I mean, in my head, I was so naive. I thought I'll get bail and I'll be back dealing the next day. In my head, I was already thinking about how I was going to be making moves as soon as I got out. But then when I got refused bail, I was like, fuck, this is what's happening now?
Your gut sets in. I was like, oh, man, I couldn't get bail on whistling in the pictures. It was just one of those things. I just never got it. My expectation was I'm not getting bail. But so man, the prison van pulls up at Surrey Hills.
Chucked in the truck, and yeah, met another bloke who was heading to Parklea for the first time. So we kind of chatted and got along pretty well, and he ended up being my cellie in a few different wings, and just arrived at Parklea, and that's when kind of the gravity of the situation starts to sink in when you got to change out of your clothes into green clothes and
strip search.
Get strip searched, and yeah, you just feel like
some of them blokes like it freaks me out when they're strip searching and one of them's licking their lips.
I was like,
no, you seem to enjoy this a bit too much.
I reckon it's the only way they get their kicks.
Yeah.
I was like, so then they make you like flick your ears in case you got a machete behind your ear, and then they make you lift your ball sack and squat and cough and all kinds of shit, and you feel like you're a meat popsicle, and then that's it. Because I was in there in 2021 during COVID, I had to go into quarantine for the first 2 weeks. And that was the worst part of the entire prison experience, was being locked up for the first 3 days, we weren't even allowed out of the cell. And then the next 11 days was I had like no TV, no books. So I was just stuck in myself for 23 and a half hours a day with like nothing to read or do. So you're just stuck in your own head. And when you first get pinched, that's not the place you want to be. I didn't want to be in my own head because it was a fucked place. It was pretty dark.
Man, I remember when I was in jail in Darwin, Redneck Wonderland. They put me in this black hole for 9 months straight. And fuck, you talk about getting in your head. It's like,
Yeah.
not a good place to be, man.
No,
That fucking
I just
place
wanted
a torture chamber.
I just wanted any escape, any
Yeah.
distraction would do.
And when you were you taking notes all your way through about some of the funny things that you're seeing? Because there's some
Yeah.
quite funny things you see in prison there.
Yeah, as soon as I got a pencil and paper, I started just to write anything just so that I would just get out of my bad thoughts. So that's when I started writing my prison meal reviews. I started scoring my lunches and dinners out of 10 on like an adjusted prison scale, just for something to do, because I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
To be able like being like a food critic of prison food. I thought that in my head that was funny. And then I just started just writing about all the insane and funny things that had happened. Like when I got raided by the Raptor Squad, one of the guys that like tackled me to the ground, he was like right over my ear. He goes, "Stay down, you fat cunt. You got a tiny cock." And I was like,
So have you, by the smell of it.
and I was like, I had pants on. So I was like, how did he know? You know?
Yeah, fucking.
Like it's true, but how does he know?
I was Nostradamus.
So all this
I
kind
think
of
that's
stuff.
projection.
Yeah. Yeah. I think these guys have so much Red Bulls before they raid a house, I reckon. They just like...
They're a different breed, aren't they?
You know, just, yeah, I've got one over on you, you know? So
There would be, like, I look at a lot of them guys and they want to be biked. They seem... I walked past them there at Walsh Bay the other day. There's that fucking TikTok prick.
Do they really?
He's that TikTok prick. And they really dim their voice, don't they? Yeah. They want to sound like fucking dead set.
Everybody is, fellas.
They're a different breed.
Well,
I don't know.
yeah,
if
all
I've
those-
ever met a squad that want to be criminals, it's the Raptor Squad.
Yeah.
They're just failed criminals.
Mm.
Shout out to the Raptor Squad. I've got lawyers.
But it's all these kind of things. I was just so insane that I just started writing jokes about it because I was like, "This is as fucked up as this situation is. There's some funny bits to it." Too.
Yeah. So many. Tell me some of the funny things you started saying. Oh man, I've done 23 years. I've seen chili wars where blokes were getting their underpants rubbed with chili and it was causing a lot of discomfort.
I remember just being like in the yard at Park. We went to the Oval and like the music's pumping and it was like the Spice Girls was playing over the radio and just like seeing a bunch of like Hard and Crimson bikies all break into song doing like "Stop right now, thank you very much," and then the song would end and everyone would go back to being tough guys again. You know, and so you see those kind of things and you're like, oh, these guys are just like me. These are just like big kids.
Yeah.
You know?
Everyone's looking for an escapism, whether it be from music. And I think, the comedy, would it be fair to say is a bit of an escapism for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I when I got out, I was just so kind of confused and lost and angry and I needed an outlet. And so for me, comedy was that outlet just to try and vent. People think that you get into comedy because you want to be funny. I got into it because I wanted to get my anger out through laughing in the face of it, I guess.
Yeah.
So I started doing jokes about just my dumb life of getting arrested and being a drug dealer and going to prison because I thought if I can take the piss out of myself and then that takes the venom out of it.
Self-deprecating is a good way to start, isn't it? That's a really good way to start. I get it. And often, being the Klaus clown is often that's someone that's either often traumatized, has faced some trauma. Let's talk about Parklea as a prison. Parklea's a privatised prison and you get fuck all there. It's like a Panadol. Let's talk about the process of getting a Panadol.
Well, I didn't get one. I had a
You're still waiting.
I've been told it's in the mail, right?
Yeah.
I had a cold, right? When I was at Parklea in 5C.
In COVID.
I had a cold and I had this throbbing headache and I went up to the office just to ask for a Panadol and they're like, no. And I was like, look, I need a fucking Panadol. I've got this throbbing headache. I've got a cold. And I'm like, oh, you got a cold? And then they locked me and my cellie away pending a COVID test. He was fucking so pissed at me. He was like, I told you not to ask for a Panadol. Don't tell them anything. And I was like, I'm sorry. I just really thought that they would give me one. I made a mistake because it's my first time in jail. I thought these guys would treat you like a human being. And then I thought, at least when they locked us away for 3 days pending a COVID test, they had the nurses come to swab me. I was like, at least now they'll give me a Panadol. Still no.
I've got to put an application in. You've got to put it on a form.
They kept saying we don't have Panadol. And then after 3 days when we came back COVID negative, that was when we got out. And then one of the one of the other inmates gave me a Panadol. I was like, next time you got a problem, come ask the boys. Don't ask the screws. Don't ask the clinic. No one here will help you.
Yeah.
And so that's when I noticed, because I was like, look, if they're creating a culture where if you've got a medical problem that you would rather ask the inmates rather than the guards, then you're going to have someone have COVID and they're going to not speak up, and then there's going to be a huge outbreak. And so I wrote a letter to the governor, Paul Baker, to point that out. And then about a week later, I got sent to another prison. And then 2 weeks after that, Parklea Prison had the biggest COVID outbreak in any prison in the country. Yeah. So I fucking told you so, fuckhead.
Yeah. Parklea's renowned for just you get fuck all. I found normal private prisons, normally you get a little bit more, but that one there is just, I don't know. You're right. They create a culture of don't ask, don't get.
I only have a data set of 2 prisons. I have from Parklea, private prison, and Long Bay, public, and the difference was like night and day. I had such a different experience.
Where'd you go, 12, 13 wing, or did you go 7, 8, 9, and 10?
I was at the top of 12 wing.
Yeah.
And so I just found the experience just totally different, and just in terms of, you could tell there was a different culture among the people working there. They treated you, there was still a huge distinction between the inmates and the guards, but at least they treated you like a human being at Long Bay. I didn't see that at Parklea. It was grim. It felt like they've just, I don't know what's going on with their culture. They've got these fucking signs on the walls saying bionic, which stands for believe it or not, I care. And I'm like, what a fucking load of horse shit that is.
Yeah, and they're making good money. They're making good money, and that's the one place. Like I've been to a couple of private prisons, and they'll run pretty good, but at Parklea's definitely not. Stuck out in the yard all day, you know. Mate, let's talk about the process. So you get Supreme Court bail, did you? Is that what it was?
No, I got. We were able to go back to court just at local for bail because I had a change of circumstances. 2 things happened. I got a different lawyer.
A bit. Was it the initial one was legal aid or duty lawyer?
No, he was my usual lawyer, but he got sick and had to pull out of the case. Yeah. So my sister's a lawyer in New York, and she kind of made some calls and found a good lawyer for me in Sydney. And then what happened was the mushrooms in the lab, they reckoned that they were contaminated or something. So for a while they got taken off my charges, and so that was my biggest charge. And so with that gone,
contaminated.
Yeah, so I don't know what happened. They said that they were like contaminated.
Someone ate them.
Who knows?
From the evidence room. Someone just got the munchies. Made their way into the evidence room, and there goes half a kilo.
We're going to wait for him to stop tripping out before we can So anyway, with that taken off the charges, it looked very different. So we went for bail then, and we got it. And then not long after I got bail, I don't know what happened. They were like, actually, they're back on.
We found him.
Yeah,
Almost
we found
regurgitated
him. He's recovered from his trip, and they're definitely psychedelic. So,
and the expert witness comes in.
Can confirm, great gear. Yeah. So, but that was pretty funny when I was locked up in Parklea. People were like laughing at me. They're like, "Old Mushroom King Hamilton isn't even selling real mushrooms." No. They tested negative.
So you go to magistrate's court. Did you appear, or did you video link?
Just on video link, and I borrowed like a big book from my cell when I was on video link, and put my glasses on. I had this big book just to try.
The old glasses, trying to look smart.
Yeah, trying to look like an intellectual with a big book and glasses. I'm like, I don't know if this is going to help, but we'll give it a try.
That's an old school trick, you know, mate. There was a pair of glasses at Long Bay when I was there. I reckon they went to about 80 court cases.
Like, it's such a dumb thing, but in your head you're like, oh, this might
make me look smart, make me look stiff.
Yeah.
Make me look like a law-abiding citizen.
This man's an intellectual. Let the man go.
So what happened?
So I got out and I was under house arrest. I wasn't allowed to leave the house unless I was in the company of my parents. I was at my parents' place.
That's where I met you at BAD, isn't it?
Yes, at the BAD Writers Festival. That's right. I was there with my mum because I wasn't allowed out of the house unless I was in the company of my parents. And then...
That's pretty harsh, considering you never had an extensive criminal history. Like, I must say, they're pretty harsh conditions. I've got a friend of mine's out on 3 kilos of coke at the moment. And just... It's all good.
Ankle bracelet?
The ankle bracelet.
Yeah. So I didn't have an ankle bracelet, but I wasn't allowed out of the house unless I was in the company of my parents. And so when I first decided to go to a stand-up comedy night, the first one I had to bring my mum along, which is just added pressure that you don't really need.
Yeah.
And then I also had to. It was one of these open mic comedy nights. They're called like bucket pulls. So everyone rocks up and you put your name in a bucket and then they get drawn out for when it's your turn. And sometimes you can have like 30 comedians there all doing 5 minutes. So the show goes for like hours. And I had a curfew as well. So I had to be like, hey guys, like I know.
Can you put a bit of honey on my name so you can pull it out easier?
Well, they pull it out and they do it like in an order so you know when you're going to be. But you might see it and be like, fuck, I'm on in 3 hours. And so I had to be like, hey guys, no one here knows me. It's my first time, but can I go on early because I have to get home for my curfew? And they're like, who the fuck is this guy? And luckily they said yes, and I did it. And then guys became more supportive of me doing comedy and allowing me to go on early so I'd get home for my curfews. But that was my life for the first few months.
Did you get your bail adjusted?
Got my bail adjusted, so I was allowed to leave the house without on my own. But I had that they moved the curfew earlier, so I had to be home by 10, I think it was. Yeah, by 10. So I still had to go out to these comedy. I started going to like stand-up comedy open mics like 5 nights a week. And every time the guys would put me on in the first half so I could do that and race home. And the cops, particularly when I was getting close to sentencing, they would be there at like 10:01 just to check.
Well, they'll actually check because normally when you got a curfew, they don't give a fuck.
They were checking like every second, third day.
Wow.
Yeah.
They took you pretty seriously. And refusing bail like that's you obviously you're pissing them off.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I guess they must have thought I was a smart ass, which I am, I guess.
Yeah, why not? They knew what was coming.
Yeah.
They knew you were going to take the piss out of them sooner or later and see the funny side of it. And that's, tell me, so you go to court, you would have been in the district or Supreme?
District.
Yeah.
Yeah, district court. And so I was doing stand-up from January 2022, and then I got sentenced in July 2022. So it'd been a few months of me doing stand-up. I'd done this big stand-up comedy competition in Sydney called Raw, where I got to the state final, which was pretty cool. And then I got sentenced in July, and I was pleading guilty. And so we had to prepare all this kind of argument about the fact that I was rehabilitating myself and it wouldn't do a lot of good to send me back now. So we argued that I spent 4 months in prison in Maxo during COVID,
Past condition,
and then I was under house arrest, under kind of quasi custody. Then there was the fact that I had been doing all these clean piss tests and doing drug counselling, and I was doing, and the judge actually really liked that I was doing stand-up comedy. He thought that was one he hadn't heard before.
Yeah, yeah.
He's like, this is a new one.
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah, there would have been a few jokes in him too. There often is, mate. The judiciary, there's some fucking weirdos in there.
Yeah. So he liked that one. I remember, it was funny when I had to go through all these text messages that the cops had got off my phone in court. And the judge would ask me about them. And he was like, Mr. Hamilton, what did it mean when you said, let's get on the ag base? And I had to be like, oh, that was me talking about getting on the bags, Your Honour.
Which type of bags?
Like bags.
Were they a ball bag or?
And then it was like, what did you mean when you said, can you bring me the bat phone? And I had to be like, that was the phone I used to sell drugs. So, I had to go through all that. And he also, liked that I was working a job. I was working, luckily I had some good mates who got me a job pretty much as soon as I got out.
Back in the PR field or?
Yeah, in marketing.
Yeah.
So I was working a kind of a white-collar job in marketing. Even when I was under house arrest, I was able to do it at my parents' place, which is pretty sweet. I know there's a lot of guys that don't have that kind of opportunity. So, I know how privileged I was to have friends and family that stuck by me and supported me. There's a lot of guys that go to jail that don't have that kind of stuff. But, so all this stuff packaged up, was enough. And also, we try to lightly make the point about the fact that the drugs really, like psychedelics, are not the ones that are destroying society.
Actually, they were healing them now.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a fine line. There was a fine line between saying these aren't the destructive ones and trying to be like, hey, he's actually doing a good thing.
It's actually healing society.
Yeah. So anyway, the judge thought that with all that, there wasn't any huge benefit in sending me back. So then I got sentenced in July to a 2.5 year ICO.
That's a pretty long ICO. Normally they hand them out 12, 18 months. But, I mean, good result.
Great result.
How'd you feel after it?
Well, I was wearing like 3 pairs of underwear and 3 pairs of socks in court.
Yeah, you always got to take the good undies with you.
Yeah, I thought that I was going back, and I was at peace with it because now that I'd already done 4 months and I had been fine, and I knew when I got sentenced that I'd be going to minimum anyway. It didn't scare me in the same way it would have if I'd never been to jail.
Yeah.
Like if I'd never been and then was getting sentenced to go, I would have been far more worried about it than the fact that like it had already the myth in my head had been dispelled by my real life experience.
What was the plans? Just go full-time
comedy?
Yeah.
No, I mean, that was the dream, but at that point I was just still working the day job and doing comedy and trying to build up my material so I could just do longer and longer and longer. And so I continued to do that through the rest of 2022. And then I signed up to do the Melbourne Comedy Festival, which I did in April last year, so April 2023. And for that, you do I did a solo show. So that was the show that you mentioned, jokes about the time I went to prison. And that was an hour show. And so it's a long time to talk, and it's a long time to try and be funny.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
I'd done 23 years. I'd struggle for that.
I think you got it in you, Russ.
Oh, maybe.
So,
I'm thinking of the stories. I've got to calculate them. Yeah.
Just time them.
Yeah.
And so I went there to the Melbourne Comedy Festival, having never done an hour show before. I signed up to do 16 shows over the course of the festival in a small cocktail bar that I got booked to do at like 10:40 at night because the festival rejected me for one of the festival rooms, but you can get other rooms. And so I got this small room late at night, and I just hoped people would come. And like there were some pretty grim nights, particularly early on. I did the show on my second night to 4 people, and they were all on like free tickets. So and it was costing me like $200 to book the room. So it's like tough to, when you do that, you're like, oh fuck, this is going to be a grind. But luckily, I think because I had the latest show on in the entire festival on like Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. People by like an hour, people would scroll through all the shows on and be like, "Oh, do you want to see some fuckwit talk about prison?" And people were like, "Yeah, actually, I'm pretty boozed up. That sounds like fun."
Yeah.
So people started coming, and then comedy critics started coming in and festival judges, and next thing you know, I got some great reviews and I got nominated for Best Newcomer at the festival. And that pretty much changed everything because off the back of that, I got some more media attention and I got a book deal out of it and management out of it. And now I get to tour around and do comedy, and it's now heading more into something I can make a living out of, which is amazing.
Beats selling drugs.
Absolutely.
And it's fun.
Yeah. I say all the time how I am a broke comedian living with my parents, and I'm happier now than I ever was as a rich drug dealer.
Yeah, for sure. I get that.
And
I think that's that whole thing with people. That's that gratitude when you talk about having that gratitude. I think, and you know what jail does to you? I think one thing jail does to you, gives you a shitload of gratitude.
Yeah, absolutely.
I live and breathe it. You know what I mean? Like everything. I've got, these people are whinging about the fucking mortgage rates. I'm saying, well, fucking try getting parole.
Yeah.
Sort of sort of that sort of stuff, man. And
Yeah, I realized when I was locked up, like, because I felt like I lost everything. I lost my fiance, my dogs, my home, my business. And I realized, well, hold on, you still got your health. A lot of guys don't have that.
yeah,
I still had my sense of humor.
mm,
I still had friends and family that stuck by me. I was like, all these things that I thought I needed, a lot of them I didn't. And a lot of the things that I didn't even realize I had, I wasn't appreciating.
yeah,
And it wasn't till you get stripped back to just the basics. You're like, holy fuck, I still have so much, and a lot of this stuff I haven't been grateful for.
mm.
I don't need that much to be happy.
Yeah, but I think when I done a post about it yesterday. I said, if you're nothing without all the material stuff, you're going to be nothing with it because you're still nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That the material external stuff doesn't change the internal problem. Fix it. So what's going on, mate? What's the plans? Touring?
Touring, yeah. So I've got a new show that I'm doing at the moment. I just got back from doing the Perth Fringe Festival. So the way comedy works in Australia is that in kind of the first half of the year, there's a whole bunch of festivals, and that's where a lot of comedians make their money, is by writing a new hour show every year, and then you go to the Perth Fringe Festival, Adelaide. There's the Melbourne Comedy Festival in April, and then Sydney, Brisbane, Perth Comedy Festivals, and you just tour around and do your shows and slowly build up an audience. And at some point, hopefully that audience is buying enough tickets for you to make a living.
Yeah, that's what you want. Well,
Yeah.
it's the old adage: if you love the job you do, you never work a day in your life. Right?
That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I work 7 days a week because a lot of the time it doesn't. Yeah, it's not feeling like
When
work.
you say a lot of your time would be writing too, wouldn't it?
Writing, doing podcasts, going to stand-up shows where I'm only doing maybe like 10 minutes and I'm not getting paid, but I'm there practicing new stuff. And so that's the payment, is me finding out whether my jokes are any good.
Yeah.
Because you can't go into an hour show with just shit you're like, I think it's funny.
Who are the comedians you look at? Who are your inspiration?
There's so many. I'm not sure how many of them are known to the general people, but like Luke Heggie is a local Sydney comedian who's amazing. Damien Power, Dan Rath, these are all guys who are on the circuit who are just like incredible. But Carl Barron obviously is just like the most iconic, I think, Aussie stand-up. People give Husey a lot of shit, but if you see how hard he works and how often he's at gigs doing the same as us, getting no money and just testing out stuff, you're like, this guy actually is a fantastic comic. Husey's awesome.
And there's such healing in laughter, isn't there? I think a lot of people go because they want to laugh, they want to feel good, because a lot of people go to those shows because they're emotionally not feeling good.
Yep. One of the reasons I got into stand-up was because when things were funny in the yard in Parklea, like I talk about this time that the screws called out for a guy named David Wilson, and then a whole yard of guys are going, like, doing their best Tom Hanks Castaway impression, going, Wilson, I'm sorry, Wilson. And I remember laughing so fucking hard that I forgot about the cameras and the guards and the fences, and I was free just for a few minutes because I was laughing so hard. And I thought, fuck, if laughter's so good that it can make me forget that I'm locked up, that's pretty powerful stuff. And so if I can make people laugh and forget about their own worries for a few minutes, that seems like a pretty worthwhile use of my time.
Me and my mate come up with this word for a turd, and it was a Gershberg, right? We said, yes, going to do a big Gershberg. Anyway, this truck come in, and this bloke come on, and he was on muster, and they called out Gershberg. And me and my mate just were in tears, fucking on the ground, laughing at this fucking bloke. And he just took back and look what the fuck.
The real Gershberg.
He was the proper Gershberg. He was the proper shit. But it's funny how in prison, I used to like the Vietnamese, because in those Vietnamese gangs, there's always one that's they're fucking funny people, Vietnamese. An Do is, I think, a testament to that.
Yeah.
But they're funny people. And we always had crews in jail where there was always just that funny cunt.
Yeah.
And I guess he was the most valued person in the crew. Not the most violent person, but the most valued, because he was the one, as you said, that took us out for that when we're laughing our guts out. And I think in jail, humour is really, really valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah, because it feels so foreign, right? You feel like, it felt like this shouldn't be a place where I'm laughing. So the fact that I am is I'm so grateful for it, and it also feels like you're rebelling against something almost by laughing.
And I can often remember recalling a day, like going back to the cell of a night time. Like there's two things. Like I'd seen a murder one day at Goulburn, and going to the cell at night and just wiping my brow, going, thank fuck I made it. But I can recall at the end of a day having a really good fucking laugh and going, that was fucking so good.
Yeah.
That appreciation of that laughter, and you know, and I think laughter goes a long way to healing. And in those places, there are a lot of damaged people that need healing.
Yeah. You know, when you're laughing, you kind of remember that there's some good parts to life. You know, it's not all doom and gloom. Yeah, I find that because of the stuff I talk about on stage, I seem to be attracting an audience of people that do have a dark sense of humor, but also it seems to be a lot of people involved with the criminal justice system. I have a lot of cops, prison officers, lawyers, and then ex or current crims will come to my shows, which is a great mix. No one else seems to be like just dominating that
Bridging
market.
the gap.
Yeah, so I'm waiting for the moment where some of them recognise each other in the room, like, oh, you're that fucking nigger. Yeah.
No, Screws have normally got the Groucho mask on there, those fucking plastic masks. No one will see me here.
But yeah, I find that these people, you know, a lot of people have dark senses of humor because of shit that that's either happened to them or shit they've seen, and these people need a laugh. They need a laugh, and they need for a lot of them. The dark senses of humor of people like Anthony Jeselnik that just say fucked up shit. You're like, there's a market for that. There's people that need that just to rebel against whatever darkness they've seen.
Tell me about the brilliance of Robin Williams. He just blew him. Like, there's there's comedians just have this absolute brilliance, and he had it.
Man, so much energy, just so funny. I mean, you hear all these things, not only about just how funny he was, but also just how good he was as a person. And I think that he was the real deal, Robin. I mean, I loved all of his movies growing up. He was just such an icon. And then that hit hard when we lost Robin, because sometimes with these guys, you don't know what they're carrying inside, because
so introspective too.
Yeah,
he was so fucking deep. He just had a really good understanding of but not good enough.
Yeah, just such a showman. But yeah, you hear all these amazing stories that came out of the woodwork when he passed, of just the things that he did behind the scenes to support people and just to be a good human. And so, you know, you can tell that. But there are a lot of comics that I come across that are just such giving people, because I think if you spend most of your nights up in rooms for no money trying to make people laugh, there must be something in you that's driving you to do that. And I kind of see those people as kindred spirits, because they believe something about laughter that I do, which is that it can really change someone's life.
Looking at it that way, you just sort of opened my eyes to a lot. Then the gift of giving, you're giving someone a memory, you know. I had a good joke the other day, and they said, what do you call a Russian with 3 balls?
Oh, I heard this one recently.
I'll put it up. I'll put it up on my post.
Tell me.
Who used to do your bollock off?
There we go.
I love little things like, there's little jokes I can always remember. Some bloke telling me, some old country bumpkin telling me this joke. He goes, and the joke is the city slicker and the countryman, they're at a pub, and they walk out in the country pub, and the country bloke's dog's licking his balls. And he goes, I wish I could do that. And he said, he might bite you if you try. I always hear that joke. There's jokes that you can hear 1,000 times that'll always make you laugh.
Absolutely.
What's one of yours?
What are some of my favorite jokes? There's one which I did on the internet recently, which I'm still laughing about, which was, did you hear about the paraplegic strip club? The place was crawling with pussy.
Oh, wow. And you can hear, you know what I love? That you can hear that in a moment, like when you're not feeling the best, and that could be the thing that can snap you out of your mood.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, absolutely.
I love that, recalling something and go, because I've got a habit of doing that these days, because if I'm feeling off kilter, I want something to change that mood.
There was one I heard yesterday, which was, what's the difference between a genealogist and a gynecologist? One looks up your family tree, one looks up your family bush.
How do people get hold of you?
So on my socials, Andrew Hamilton Comedy is my Instagram handle, or Andrew Hamo on TikTok. That's about it, really. And I'm touring around. I'm doing Adelaide next week, and then I'll be in Melbourne for the Comedy Festival, Sydney for the Comedy Festival, Brisbane, and then Perth. And then we're going to add some more tour dates at the back end of the year when my book comes out. End of July.
I noticed you're wearing is that a dark green, mate?
So it's like a charcoal, I think.
Okay, I was thinking dark green, but anyway, I love green.
Do you?
I love the colour green. People just go, you wore it for so long.
Yeah,
It suits you.
People do ask me. Oh yeah, I'm not huge on the prison kind of green colours,
No.
but yeah, this is. Hopefully, it doesn't look too green on camera.
No, it looks great. Andrew Hamilton, thank you for being on the Stick Up, brother.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Russ. This is great.